This video is not brought to you by Pepsi Max. Hi, me again. I've come to talk about something which, unlike my last few videos, you might actually know about this time. It's won multiple awards, I assume. It's got plenty of good reviews, both from user scores on aggregate sites and from actual reviewers on review sites. And yet, it's something that I'm probably in the minority of in my opinions. So, today we're talking about Life is Strange. Now, I'll get it out in the open. I hate Life is Strange. I know, an unpopular opinion. There's no shade on you if you enjoy Life is Strange. I can probably see why you might. But this video is more to show you that you can like it, but you can't say that it's a good game. In this case, those two are mutually exclusive. So the layout of this video is going to be a little bit like this. We're going to talk about the general kind of plot and premise, some of the characters. We're going to talk about the things that I maybe like a little bit, and then everything else. You might think it makes sense to do it as sort of like a, go through the gameplay, what do and don't I like? Go through the story, what do and don't I like? But the problem is that I just don't have enough that I like to be able to pad those things out. And also, once I get going, I want to keep going, to be perfectly honest. I'll put my cards on the table. I have only played Life is Strange 1 and Before the Storm. I did play that, what was it, like a demo where it's like the adventures of Captain Awesome or something? So I can't comment on Life is Strange 2 or the one that came after it. Those aren't my speciality. But today we're just going to talk about Life is Strange 1. Maybe we'll talk about Before the Storm just a little bit, but it's not really in my wheelhouse. Spoilers ahead if, for whatever reason, you haven't played Life is Strange 1 by now. It came out, like, what, I don't know, 8 years ago? So, let's talk about the general story. After studying photography or art at some other town, Max Caulfield returns to Arcadia Bay. One day while in school, she enters the bathroom and sees one of her old friends, Chloe Price, get shot in the stomach by another character called Nathan Prescott. We'll go through all of these characters a little bit later on. Max Caulfield sees a blue sort of butterfly and realises that she has the ability to rewind time. She wakes up in her class moments before the fateful shooting. I should say, some of the ways in which I tell the story aren't going to be chronological, and it might be me kind of going, oh, and I think this, because, look, I played this game maybe 4 or 5 years ago for the 5th time, so I've got a good grasp, but I don't remember everything. Max Caulfield, in ways that I can't remember, manages to stop the shooting, and reconnects with her childhood friend Chloe Price. Now, a little bit of background information about Chloe, she hasn't got a dad. He died in a car accident, I think. In reconnecting with Chloe, Max finds out a few new details about her, such as the fact that she has a drug dealer called Frank. Frank has a dog, I think called Pompadour? Pomplamoose? Pompadour? I don't remember. Max Caulfield starts re-exploring Arcadia Bay with Chloe, using and exploiting their newly found ability to rewind time. And they do it in a way which I probably would as well. And they go to a junkyard and shoot bottles and Chloe gets injured. And then they go to a junkyard and shoot some bottles and Chloe gets injured. It's the same thing, I just wanted you to see it twice because I liked it, I assumed you would as well. Of course, after each of these accidents, Max rewinds. A big portion of the story is Chloe and Max trying to find out what happened to Rachel Amber. Rachel Amber was Chloe Price's new friend once Max had left, and shortly before Max's return, Rachel disappeared. In Before the Storm, it's explained that they met in school in like an art class or something. It's all extremely boring. all of them are extremely boring. They're like Quantic Dreams. All they do is just tell a story and they act like it's a game. No, it's not. They find out that Chloe's drug dealer, Frank, actually had a relationship with Rachel, but that she had hidden it from Chloe. Very quickly, I see how this might get confusing, so let's just break down some of the characters. First, we have Pompidou. He's not important, I just like him. Next we have Max Caulfield, the main protagonist of the game. Chloe, who is both the protagonist and the antagonist, we'll talk about that later. We have Joyce, which is Chloe's mother. Frank, which is her drug dealer. David, who is her stepfather. Don't ask me why I ordered them that way, it doesn't matter. We've got Victoria Chase. She's just like a pretty, also rich girl at the school. Nathan Prescott, who is a trust fund baby, just a snivelling little rat. And last of all, she doesn't really matter too much, but we'll talk about her anyway. There's Kate Marsh. She's just someone to communicate the story. Oh, and now that I remember, there's also Mr. Jefferson, the photography teacher. He's pretty insignificant for the most part. Max transports back in time through a photograph. Just is. This picture transports her back to a time when she was at Chloe's house as a child before she went to move away to study photography. In this scene, she tries to change history, namely by saving Chloe's dad from dying in a car accident. In Before the Storm, we sort of get flashbacks to it, and I'll be honest, I have to say, of all the songs he could have died to, I think this is one of the best. Burning the midnight oil again. Song fucking slaps. Anyway, Max, as I said, tries to change the past and save him from being in a car accident. And then when Max returns to the present, she finds out that by altering history, Chloe's dad didn't die, but Chloe was in a car accident and became tetraplegic. And in this rather short sequence, Chloe essentially asks Max to kill her. She says, I can't do the things that I want, I don't have a good quality of life, I'm a burden for my family. And just to put it out there, it's not accurate. If you have a disability, you're not a burden. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We'll talk about this more later, but the game focuses quite a lot on giving you choices, and at this moment, two lay before you. You can either abide by Chloe's wish and kill her.
I want this time with you to be my last memory. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
All you have to do is crank up the IV to 11.
Or you can choose to let her live. And that's basically it. You go back, you undo that timeline, you come back to the present one, and things are as they were. Hey, it's Finch while editing. I've realised that I actually missed out some context here while I was looking up what happened next in the story. Basically, Max returns to Arcadia Bay and they sneak into the principal's office to get dirt on Nathan. Amongst the files that they found in the principal's office, they, I think, get directed to a barn or a bunker of sorts that belongs to the Prescott family. And in this bunker, they find folder after folder of photographs of people who have died and people who have disappeared, including Rachel Amber. They find information about where Rachel Amber is buried, and they go and uncover her. Now, when they get there, they are apprehended almost by the villain, who is Mr. Jefferson. We'll talk about this reveal a little bit later on, but for now, all you need to know is that he's the antagonist, really. Mr. Jefferson shoots Chloe and kills her, soz, and Max is now trapped in this sort of, I think, does he call it his red room or his dark room or developing room, something like that. And Max is bound and drugged, and Mr. Jefferson reveals that the reason he did all of this is because he's like, there's nothing as pure and special as a drugged girl.
This angle highlights your purity, see? The slightly unconscious model is often the most open and honest. No vanity or posing, just pure expression.
Which, the thing is, like, he's not a good villain in any way. But even this, I'm like, fucking no, dude. It doesn't make him seem like a criminal mastermind. It just makes him seem weirdly, like, especially sick in the head. And when you think about, like, you know, your Scar from Lion King, or Scar the music, it's pretty evil, but you can begin to understand, and almost like you see humanity in him, despite knowing that he's evil. But Mr. Jefferson is just... Anyway, I'm getting into my complaints again. So, Max tries to go through more photographs. Max goes back in time, she stops it all from happening, she tells the authorities about Mr. Jefferson, and he's apprehended. And then she gets to go on like an art trip to New York, I think, with the principal. The problem is that while she's there, she has premonitions about something which I actually forgot to mention. Right back at the beginning of the game, Max has premonitions about a storm that's coming, and that's all you really need to know about it. While in New York with the principal, remembers about the storm, and she's like, oh shit, I gotta rewind time again and put things back to the timeline we were just in, where I was about to be drugged and killed again. So she does. I think it's at this point the universe starts to get a little bit fucky. Loads of dead whales are turning up, birds are splattering against windows, and she's like reliving all of these memories again, and it's pretty surreal. I think it's at this point. The game pretty much, like I say, devolves into a nightmare-scape. You know, all of the choices that she ever made come back to haunt her, and, you know, she lives them all and, you know, grieves for the past and all of this. And it finally culminates when she's at a lighthouse. This lighthouse is what she saw in her premonition. At various points in the game, she identifies that the storm is a consequence of her time travelling. It's not really explained why, but, you know, we'll ignore it. Max is then left with one final choice. Does she go back in time, stop it all from happening? Chloe gets killed, the storm never comes to Arcadia Bay, and everyone lives not knowing what she sacrificed? Or does she allow the storm to continue? Everything that she's done isn't for nothing. She saves Chloe, and they escape Arcadia Bay, leaving everyone else to die. And that's how the game ends. Let's get my compliments out the way, shall we? You know, save us all a little bit of time. The music is perfect for the Pacific Northwest. It makes me think of that kind of indie folk, you know, going on a road trip through pine trees kind of stuff. You know, and the soundtrack has Sufjan Stevens, who is a stupendous musician. You know, big up Sufjan.
I forgive you, mother, I can hear you, and I long to be near you.
The sound design is okay, you know, unlike the monkey squirrels in Deadly Premonition, or the weird toaster audio in Bully.
Oh, cool! Jimmy, it's so cute! Thanks for a great date, Jimmy.
There aren't any sound effects that stand out to me in Life is Strange. You know, everything sounds as it should. So, you know, good job, sound design team. You did well. The last compliment I have is I quite like the outfits in the game. Victoria Chase, despite being dressed like an old lady, I like the way she looks. I want to look like that. Same for Chloe. Even though she is the kind of typical, you know, tall, leggy kind of old GF that we all want, which I wish I could be as opposed to my 5'3" short leggy girlfriend, I love the way that she looks. And I think even when we look at Max Caulfield, who is painfully unlikable, her outfits are still quite cute. They're simple, and there's nothing wrong with them. And that's it. That is all the compliment that I have to say about this game. I can't compliment how long it is. I can't compliment how they split it into episodes. I can't compliment, you know, even the most minute of things that some people might scrounge for to say, well, at least, no, there is nothing else. So here's my thing with the story, okay? 1, it doesn't matter. And 2, it doesn't make sense. A big portion of the game, like I mentioned, is that you get to make choices. Will you save Kate Marsh from attempting suicide? Will you side with Chloe or David during an argument? Will you talk to certain people or save them from getting splashed? At the end of the game, your decision is, do you want to undo fucking everything and go back to the beginning, invalidating everything that's happened across every chapter and let the town live? Or do you want to have it all mean something, but then you sacrifice the entire town for one person? And like, you know, I'm in love. I probably wouldn't sacrifice a whole town of people to save that person I love. You know, seems pretty selfish, if you ask me. So the game kind of pushes you in an indirect way to undo everything, to go back to the beginning, because how can you live with yourself, you know, killing everyone to save one person? And I should say, the story wants Chloe to die. It's like Final Destination. She gets shot by Nathan. She gets shot by Mr. Jefferson. She gets shot by Max in the junkyard. She is meant to die. This is just how it is. My thing as well is, let's say you go with the option to save Chloe. You allow the whole town to die and Chloe lives. What makes you think that it would end there? I know Max has this whole thing about the tornado and like, oh, the tornado's coming, it's going to kill the town. Yeah. What if there's another one? What if you get premonitions of a second one? And then you might need to kill another whole village or town to save this girl and put your own life in danger. That's bonkers. Notwithstanding the absolutely abysmal ending, Mr. Jefferson as the villain, it makes no sense. You might say, oh, but you know, he wanted to drug girls and get cool pictures. Yeah, but what I mean is, the game spent so long forcing you into thinking that it's Nathan. At one point, I think he says something like, I'll do to you what I did to that bitch Rachel Amber or something. It's like, he's just outright saying, hey, I'm the bad person, I killed Rachel Amber. And so when Mr. Jefferson comes along and kills Chloe, yeah, it's a surprise, but because they did a red herring in the most awful way they possibly could. But then the rest of the plot is just bogus as well. On the back of the plot, let's just talk about some of the gameplay, because they really do intertwine. I mentioned earlier that obviously Max can rewind time, but there's a specific limit in the game, and it hammers this both in cutscenes and in gameplay, which is if she rewinds too much, she can get a headache and or a nosebleed.
He's a superhero! Now it's your turn to bust a cap.
I don't know.
Max, your nose. Damn.
And like, okay, I think saying that someone can only rewind so far because they have those constraints is fine. It explains it, it doesn't require a mystic bullshit, and it kind of makes sense because Max has to do this like, when she rewinds time, so it sounds like it's taking strain on her. Fine. My problem is that the game doesn't make it consistent. Sometimes you can rewind 30 seconds, sometimes you can only rewind 3 seconds. But you get the same consequence either way. If it was just after a cutscene and you tried to rewind, I would be fine with a message appearing on screen being like, you can't do that yet. You know, like, fine. I know the reason why and it's consistent. But the fact that they're like, you know, oh, you can rewind straight away, but only since the cutscene finished or something, which means that as time goes on, so, you know, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, you can then rewind longer, and that doesn't make any sense. And also, so it's suggested that I think Max transports through time through this photo by accident. Okay. How then can she do it on command later? Doesn't make any sense if you ask me. But I think my biggest fucking gripe with the gameplay is that it doesn't explain what it looks like to the other characters. Let me explain. So, I mentioned that there's a scene in which Chloe and Max go to the principal's office. And using things around the school, Max blows up the door to the principal's office, and that's how they find information on Nathan. And then once they get inside the office, Max rewinds time so the door goes back to normal, Chloe's on the other side of the door, but Max is on the inside.
Welcome to my domain.
What did that look like to Chloe? Now, she had her face pressed up against the door. Obviously, to her, she'd have gone, okay, see what you can find. And then Max opening it from the inside. Okay, what if she had turned around? What about when she's caught on camera in the game? And you can rewind in front of people. It doesn't explain, like, do you move really quickly? Do you just, like, go and appear at, like, another location? None of it makes any sense at all. Because, like, even if you're like, oh, no, it's just that, like, history up to that point rewrites itself so that she's at that point at that time. It's like, but then with the being inside the room, and which is locked after she blew it up, how could that work? It has to be that she pops in front of people, but nobody acknowledges it, ever. So, we've spoken a little bit about why the plot is bogus and how it doesn't make any sense. We've spoken about how the gameplay messes up the plot and also doesn't make any sense. I guess we'll talk about the characters next.
I really love some Fortnite.
We've touched on Mr. Jefferson being a bad character. Let's go through some of the others. First of all, we've got Max, who is just generally unlikable. She doesn't really have too much of a personality. She's there less to... She isn't funny, she isn't particularly brave, she isn't really smart. Everything that she is and does comes from her time travel. If she's confident in something, it's because she's gone back in time. If she knows something is for the better, it's because she's gone back in time. So she as a character doesn't have any innate characteristics. I forgot to mention during the gameplay portion, and I just want to touch on this, is you can make Max interact with just about anything and anyone. You can look at, you know, like a totem pole and think to yourself things, and you can look at like a padlock and think things. But the problem is that Max's thoughts don't work like people think. I don't know how else to word that, so I'll just explain. I get that certain people think in whole sentences. I know that I do sometimes, but it's the exception, not the rule. Max always thinks in full sentences, and you might think, oh, okay, well, maybe she's just one of those people. Okay, sure, you know, maybe I'll accept that. Do you stutter in your thoughts? I don't know about you, but I think if I'm in like a crisis, like Max is towards the game, my brain doesn't go when it's about to speak. So no, I don't. It's not fun. It doesn't make sense, and it's the same as her just talking aloud. Both would be bad.
I can use that picture.
And on that note, the things that you can interact with are so fucking boring. It's not like, you know, you can interact with this little thing, it's like a mini game or something, or there's something insightful and you need to look around, like L.A. Noire. It is just bad. It's like, there's a scene when she's looking at, I think, David's locker, and she sees the padlock and she goes,
Whoa, that is a serious padlock on that locker. Hey David, what you hiding?
what? Is that a reference to something? Oh, what does it mean? And what's more is that when you start interacting with something, you can't stop. You have to hear the whole thought. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I think it's dog shit, if you couldn't tell. So, there's a vestigial part of Max called Chloe Price. Have you heard of her? Now, unlike Max, Chloe has personality. She's, you know, rebellious. She's a free spirit. She, you know, dyes her hair and, you know, she carries a gun, whatever. So she's got some personality. But she is also extremely unlikable. Maybe it's because I don't think teenage girls are fun to hang around. But she is just like a crybaby. But like on a different level. So there's a scene where I think David is making some reasonable point, I can't remember what it is, and if you side with him, Chloe says, well, why don't you go back in time and say something else so you don't have to hurt my feelings? It's like, no, he's right. Or it's like later in the game when you're in that weird dream hellscape, if you kill Chloe, she's like, you killed me, and if you don't kill her, she's like, you didn't kill me, you know. So she's just a crybaby there. That one's maybe a little bit more nuanced. There's a bit when they're in the junkyard and she gets injured. She's like, oh, fuck, Max, rewind. So, you know, because it hurts. It's like, yeah, I'm not just going to leave you to be shot, am I? So, yeah, she's, like I say, also pretty unlikable. Their relationship to each other, I think there's a lot of arguments to be made, one way or the other, about Are they in love? The game was touted as an LGBTQ plus game, which, great. My problem is that they didn't make it more overt that they were... really that they felt anything for each other. I know that, like, Max is obviously like, I don't want Chloe to die, and Chloe's like, I want this person to not shoot me. But it doesn't make it clear whether it's like a romantic love, whether it's like a very strong kind of agape sort of love. It just seems like they didn't want to commit to it. Unlike Life is Strange 2, where I think you can get fucking dicked down by a guy. A plus. Let's talk about Nathan, I guess. I mentioned earlier that Nathan is sort of like a trust fund baby. My problem with him is predominantly his voice acting. It's very anime, like, what? How did you know about that? Really over the top. It's not how people talk. It's just unlikable. And it doesn't seem like a real person.
What are you doing in my dorm?
My immersion is ruined. I just remember there is a character which, talking about vestigial parts of Max, we've got Warren. Warren is just like a boy who likes Max. That's his whole personality. His voice acting is fine, no better or worse than anyone else's, I guess, except for Nathan's. And yeah, like I say, he's just there really to love Max, and in some ways to be a bit of an ex machina, like he happens to have a truck that they can borrow, and he's gonna fight Nathan for them, and like I say, he just doesn't contribute personality-wise. We've got Frank. Frank is pretty interesting, I guess. He's got some depth to him. Like, yeah, okay, he's a drug dealer, and he's got some scary tattoos, but he's got a dog that he loves and called Pompidou. And Frank is cool. Like I say, he had a relationship with Rachel. He seemed to really care about her in some capacity. Yeah, he sells drugs, but also he loves his dog. Loves pizza. Yeah, no, I feel for Frank. And also, he loves beans. There's a bit when you're in a cafeteria and you can, like, tip his fucking plate of beans or something, and he like, gets up from his seat. He's like, those were my beans, Max. A plus, dude. I love the writing, I love the voice acting, I love that scene so much.
I was eating those beans. Are you fucking insane? I was eating those beans! Ugh! Those were my beans, Max! Those were my fucking beans!
The other characters are pretty, nothing. They're not really of any major note, I guess.
Looking up high.
I do want to talk more about the dialogue, but the problem is, without having played the game recently, there aren't too many examples that come to mind. What I would say is, if anyone does disagree with me while watching this, my advice would be, play the game. Really listen to what people are saying and think, is this how people talk to each other? If someone spoke to me like this, would I know how to respond? And is this manner of speaking replicated in any other media? So there's a scene towards the beginning of the game where you come downstairs in Chloe's house, and Joyce, Chloe's mother, is making breakfast. And you offer to help, and she says, and I cannot stress enough, this is without prompt, can you please get me the actual eggs?
I need you to grab me the actual eggs and the bacon.
To be clear, it's not like she had asked for eggs already and Max had brought her fake eggs or something, and she was like, yeah, it's really funny, can you bring me the actual eggs? No, it's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm making breakfast. Care to help? Yes, please, what can I do? Please get me the actual eggs. What does that mean? Who speaks like that? I spend more time than I should probably thinking, still, years later, what does that mean? What did they mean to convey by that? There's a scene towards the end. It's in the dreamscape sort of hellish nightmare reality that I mentioned earlier, where you're like going through, I don't know how to describe it, you're in Mr. Jefferson's like dark room, and there's like, in the settee in front of you, there's like Victoria and Chloe like making out or something, whatever, but there's a scene in that area where I think Mr. Jefferson talks about Chloe, and he goes, they're fucking in heaven now. It's like, huh?
Chloe and Rachel. You killed both of them.
They're fucking together in heaven.
There's everything and anything that Nathan says. That's pretty bonkers. All in all, when we think about the weird way in which people communicate with each other, the weird sorts of references they make that I don't understand, that outdated humour, everything just feels out of place. Like it is a hodgepodge of a bunch of middle-aged guys thinking, is this what teenage girls are like and do like? And just real quick, while it comes to mind, some of the things that Max thinks to herself or says, lots of wowzers, lots of hella. No, it's not kid speak, it's weird. They ain't got that, you know, gyat. They ain't risen that skibbity toilet. Not like me. Anyway, there's like a bit where Victoria Chase is bullying Max. Now, Max's photography, as context, focuses a lot on herself. She takes lots of self-portraits and, you know, daguerreotypes or whatever. And Victoria Chase at one point says, "Go fuck your selfie."
Now, why don't you go fuck your selfie?
Really think about that. Just chew on that for a second. Go fuck your selfie. It's wordplay. It's not cutting. And in fact, I think it probably makes Victoria look more stupid than Max in that context. I don't know. Like I say, it's just it's weird writing. Kids don't talk like that. And I don't know about you, if I was at school in a photography class and I took lots of, you know, self-portraits or selfies and someone was picking fun of me, they wouldn't say, "Go fuck your selfie." They'd say, "You're a fucking weirdo and I don't like you." And that would be it, and that would be cutting. That's how kids talk to each other. Sorry. So yeah, I think we've got a pretty good understanding of the weird dialogue. We've spoken about the gameplay, spoken about the plot. I want to, I guess, spend one last bit talking about the humour in the game. So there's quite a lot of like image macros from 2009 that are stored in the game, which even when the game came out is very outdated. Not outdated like, the racial stereotypes you saw in Dumbo, which are now very uncomfortable, but outdated in as much as they're not funny. And now looking at it through an anachronistic lens, we look at it and we think, this is so cringe. Like, they've got that, why whatever face on Kate Marsh's door in her dorm or something. There's a bit where I think Max and Chloe go into a swimming pool. It's not a worthwhile scene to talk about in depth, but like, Chloe says like, "Oh, hell yeah, whatever, splish splash."
You're right. We hella deserve it. Splish splash.
Huh? Like, the humour just doesn't land. I played it as, I think, a late teenager. I didn't understand it. I played it as an adult. I still don't understand it. It's just bad. It's always been bad. I think when I talk to people about why they like Life is Strange, some people have said that it allowed them to kind of live the experiences of a teenage girl they perhaps didn't. Like, my friends who are trans femme, which, I kind of get, but I don't think Max and Chloe represent teenage girls. I think Chloe represents more of a teenage girl. She's got that angst. She's got the rebellious kind of streak in her, but she's emotionally vapid, and I think if you have fun playing as someone like that, that's weird. Max doesn't have a personality. She's just there to make lots of observations in very weird ways. So that's, and you don't talk about sci-fi and current shows like you would as a teenage girl, so no, I don't buy that argument. Some people say that, the story was compelling. Well, as we've explained, the story amounts to nothing at the end, or makes you feel like a bad person. Some people might say, I like the art style. So, okay, how do I explain this? Everything looks like it's made out of clay. The faces, the buildings, the various kind of props or whatever. And the problem with this is that there isn't really a great deal of emotion. No one ever really does anything with their face outside like the basic like,
I want this time with you to be my last memory.
or maybe doing like a, or occasionally even like a maybe a slightly angry. There's just nothing there. Some of the things in the art style I kind of like to represent wind, it has white lines going through the air, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But then that's kind of it, to be honest. It uses lots of like artwork of things, which can be quite fun. But the problem is, in lots of the artwork that you see, it's really low detail. It's just supposed to represent a generic thing, and so they didn't bother giving it detail. Maybe it's so that it could run on teenage girls' laptops, I don't know, but it's just bad. Look at this and tell me that you wouldn't be distracted. Just speaking of art, there's a function in the game where you can go into Max's journal and you can see her thoughts and go on her phone and look at messages and do whatever. Boring. I'm biased on this one, I'll admit. You know, like in Saw or whatever, where you can read the various pages about, like, here is what happened to the staff in the hospital here, isn't it weird? And, you know, and there are games you can pick up notes for lore, and if that's your deal, go for it. But the journal is just, it is just exposition. It is just, oh, I met up with Chloe. She was my best friend when I was a child from the age of 5 growing up. We grew apart when I moved out of Arcadia Bay, and it's just, I cannot explain enough how unfun it is to read and how little additional insight it actually provides. In Before the Storm, there's a similar function where you can also read through Chloe's journal. And in that, bearing in mind, she's like a child. They're talking about, like, rubbing one out. Ugh. Those guys are fucking pedophiles, dude. I know we're talking about the first one, but just while I've quickly touched on Before the Storm, can we talk about this? They added this thing in Life is Strange where in Before the Storm, where to see your objectives, you could lift up your hand because you've written it on the palm of your hand. Okay, I can maybe see why that might be, you know, fun and relevant without being jarring. But when her hand looks like that, I'm just gobsmacked. A lot of this video is me sighing and going, I don't know what to tell you. It's weird because it blows my mind that this many people gave it a positive review. Just one last thing before we wrap up. Life is Strange has this habit of making you need to interact at points where it is unfun to do so. It kind of has that Quantic Dreams effect where it will be like, oh, you're going through this like cutscene kind of thing. Press triangle to ring the doorbell.
Would you like to ring the doorbell? No other choice. Like, that could have been part of the cutscene too. Well, it was, and then Jesus Christ.
And it's like, what? And there's no other options. Nothing happens if you don't do it. It just waits for you to. And so the whole game suffers from this thing where it wants to be a movie and a game, but it fails at both. It's not a good movie. If I watched it as a series of cutscenes, I would be bored out of my fucking wits. And playing it as a game, I was bored out of my fucking wits. So here we are. It's neither a game nor a movie, with no good voice acting, no good line delivery, no good dialogue, no good gameplay, no good graphics, no good plot, no good gameplay mechanics. Everything about it, except for the music, is bad. I might do one on the newer Life is Strange at some point. I seem to remember I did play the second Life is Strange. The thing is, they didn't really learn any of their mistakes following the first one. Life is Strange Before the Storm is especially boring because you don't even have a superpower. You can't rewind certain things and see how, you know, whatever turns out. Your only power in that game is the ability to argue. And that's it. And it's not even an ability, it's just a game mechanic. It doesn't make Chloe in any way interesting. I should say my reliance on Bro Team clips isn't necessarily because I like Bro Team. It's just, you know, what comes to mind when I think about it. It's the only gameplay I know. But talking about Life is Strange 2, I remember him saying that you play as a character whose brother can kill people and destroy things with his mind, and you play as the character telling him not to. None of the games have anything of any value to offer. They're not fun. The graphics all look the same. The characters are always unlikable. Thanks for your time.